Amy. Thank you so much for joining us here at Spotlight. For those who don't know you yet, could you please introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Amy Grilli. I am the co-founder of which is a platform to help parents go back to work after they've had children.
You're fighting with the 5 Hour Club for a 5 hour work day, is that right?
That is, yeah. So we work with employers to shape these 5 hour work days, which essentially is a role that can work between the school hours. And we're looking for particular things when we shape these roles. So they are professional roles, that they are up to 25 hours a week, that they have pro rata salary, but ideally more because the parents are obviously really experienced and we want them to acknowledge that. And obviously any family friendly benefits that they can offer, ideally remote and hybrid roles work really well. And we share those then on our job board, 5 Hour Careers, which we then share out to our audience who are really engaged. And as part of our community, we have a podcast where we share stories about how other parents navigate life between school hours. And yeah, and we share tips and tricks through our coach masterclasses as well, and lots of resources to just help parents maintain their careers and go back to their careers after children because we know it's so difficult. So we're just doing everything we can to help parents do that.
Yeah, that sounds really amazing. Thank you for the work you're doing. So it sounds really simple, and the concept is really simple, but of course, switching to a 5 hour workday requires quite a cultural change. What made you realize that this systemic issue was worth fighting for in the first place?
Sure. So for me, it was for my own personal struggle. So I had taken 5 years out of my career to spend time with my two children, who are now 6 and 3. During that time, I was ready to go back and work and continue my career. I was looking to become an educational psychologist, as I'd been a teacher before that. And I was looking for a part-time role, and I just could not find anything that worked, not only just within the school hours, but just a part-time role that was professional enough, that looked at the experience that I gained in my career previous to children. So I just felt that there was this huge gap. And honestly, I just felt really stuck myself in where I go next. Do I take a part time role that is lower qualification, lower salary, just to get me back into a job? Or do I just have to quit my career altogether and just accept I have to compromise? And so I felt really stuck with that. And I sort of had this idea around the 5 hour workday, 5 hour club, and shared it with my now co-founder. She was a friend from NCT at the time, and we'd had two boys together. And then we sort of said, okay, well, we're going to look to just seeing if anybody else feels this way, if they feel stuck like I did. She'd transitioned very well from being a teacher into tech. So I was like, well, it is possible. These flexible roles are out there and these part-time roles are out there. It's just finding them. So we had this idea for the 5 Hour Club. And then I shared a post on LinkedIn. It was my first ever post. I'd never really been on there as a teacher, and it went crazy. It hit 14 million impressions in 14 days. So I think it just showed the magnitude of the problem. And it was not just in the UK, it was a global problem. And we were like, we have to do something about this. There's clearly a problem. I sort of shared my story, but said, could this be the answer? And other people seemed to resonate with that. So we were like, okay. And then what we did was we did a survey, and nearly 2,500 parents over 64 countries responded to that, and they said they wanted a job board. So that's what we did. That was our first point of call. And within 2 months after sharing that post, we created our 5 Hour Careers job board. So it's been a roller coaster ride. It's only been a year. So yeah, I think knowing that so many other people felt this way made me realize it's not just my problem. This is a systemic issue that goes back to the fact that we are not supported in a way for us to be able to go back to our careers. When I say us, I'm mainly talking about women. We're looking at the motherhood penalty here. We're looking about the gender pay gap because we're just not given those opportunities to go back to work in the first place. So yes, that's where it sort of made me realize this is the problem and this is what we're going to have to do something about this.
Really cool. I can really see how passionate you are about it. So that's beautiful. With the 5 Hour Club, you're describing parenting as deep work. And as a parent of two toddlers, I can confirm that it is indeed work. And sometimes it's harder work than my full-time job, which is 40 hours a week. How do you think reframing parenting this way could change how companies support working mothers in particular, like you just mentioned, and change how mothers value themselves as well?
Yeah, so I had a bit of an identity crisis when my eldest started school. I didn't know what to say at the school gates about who I was, what I did. You know, I was essentially a stay-at-home mum, but that is just not valued in our culture. It's just not valued in our systems at the moment, which is such a shame because it is such important work, and so many of us want to do that deep work. They want to spend that time with our children, but because we essentially have to choose between work and our children, you know, it's that work like you don't have children and have your children like you don't work, and that's just not possible. You know, it's really, it's, we were sold this lie of have it all, and actually it's impossible to have it all. You have to pick and choose, and we don't talk about balance here, we talk about boundaries, you know, finding ways to help mothers in particular create boundaries so that they're able to protect the time that they need with their children, but also find a way to work there and carry on their career. So I think it's about asking employers to do the same. It's to sort of carve out time where they're really thoughtful of the time that parents and women have in the school day and making it match up. We're looking at a 9 to 5 still, which was come along 100 years ago now, and you know, everything has changed since then, and we're still stuck to this 8 hour day, and the school hour is only a 6 hour day. So we have to be thoughtful of the fact that actually we need to change something to work around the time that we do have without our children. And obviously, with the lack of affordable childcare and all of those systems in place, it makes it really hard for you to extend your working day beyond those school hours. So I think it's for the employer to be thoughtful of that, thinking about how they can shape the working day in a way that is flexible for parents, about, you know, having all the meetings during the core hours when parents are able to work, and just being cognizant of the fact that, you know, not all parents want to be doing full time or can't do full time because maybe their partner does full time and they have to be the default parent. So I think it just goes to the employer's responsibility to actually think about how they are being flexible and how they're presenting that also in a job description, because we all know, you know, those ones where they say, oh, full time and flexible working, but you know, what does that actually mean for a parent? So it's on the employers really to take responsibility for how they're showcasing their flexibility. How are they really flexible? You know, what hours are they able to offer? Can they be more transparent? And that's why we ask for things in our job descriptions about the actual salary for the number of hours that are needed, the actual hours, as opposed to it being full-time or part-time. Because I think employers think they're opening up the talent pool by offering both of those things, but actually what they're doing is cutting it in half, because lots of those parents, that's a barrier to say, well, like, you know, we know we're going up against a full-time person who maybe doesn't need the flexibility that we do. So it is just about being thoughtful, I think, about really what parents need, because flexibility works both ways. A great HR lead taught me that, and I think if an employer can be flexible, then that parent is going to be flexible back, because they really are grateful for that opportunity to go back to their career.
Yeah. And you know, when you're presenting this opportunity to employers, what do you say is in it for them?
For them, they're going to get a really skilled, experienced employee, somebody who's often dedicated, especially if they really do show up in terms of the flexibility that they're offering. You know, that parent is going to be so grateful in return. Unfortunately, so in some ways, we do feel like we are grateful for those opportunities because they're so few and far between. When we find an employer that is truly family friendly, we are going to stay there. You're going to retain these women who maybe always drop out of the workforce. We know the data around this, and we know that there's, you know, in particular industries like in tech and in STEM and engineering, all of these things, that women drop out of the workforce at the ages of 35 to 45. And it's like, well, shock. You wonder why, when actually there's no part-time opportunities for them. So it's about thinking about that workforce as a really untapped talent pool who have experience, often 10 plus years experience. They have the skills, they've been leaders in the past, they're bringing all this to your company, especially if they've worked for you before. Think about how you can then keep those employees who have maybe gone off on maternity leave, they've had their babies, then, you know, bring them back in and show up for them like they have for you, and you'll get that back in bounds.
Hmm. What would you say to a mom who's keen on getting back into the workforce, who's now up against an employer who doesn't really believe in the 5 hour workday, and she has to, let's say, fight for this flexibility? What would you advise her to do?
I would say stick to your guns, and I would say be confident and assertive with what you need, because at the end of the day, if you go in and take an opportunity which seems good on the surface but actually isn't really going to be flexible, then you're not going to stay there long term. You're not going to be able to, it's not sustainable. So we often recommend that you share that you want part-time work or you would like flexible hours from the beginning, so that an employer can, if they're going to discriminate against you, they're going to do it straight away. And that's a huge red flag for any parent. And you think, well, actually, I don't want to work for that company anyway. So the best thing you can do is be as transparent as you possibly can as a woman, as a parent, stepping back into the workforce. Be confident in all of the skills that you bring to the table. Create that business case for why actually you can get this much done in this reduced hours, because you're bringing all this experience to the table, and be confident with that. And treat it like a business case, because we know businesses talking money, and but think about the long-term reward that they're going to get from you coming in, even on those reduced hours. They're going to get heaps and bounds of experience. So be proud of that and be confident with that. And I would say treat anybody who questions that and questions how you're going to care for your children and all of those things with caution, and think, well, actually, that's a red flag and I probably don't want to work for them anyway. So just be true to what you really need, and hopefully it will weed out all of the companies that actually you don't want to be working for.
Yeah, really great answer, really great advice. And let's say the employer goes, well, this is quite a big step, like when maybe not quite ready to offer something like a 5-hour workday. What would you say are some low barrier, high impact moves that a company could make to support working parents better? Because, especially now that we feel we're in a kind of post DEI cost-cutting climate, that, a lot of companies might be like, whoa, let's start small. Like, how would you get started with that?
One of the easiest things that an employer can do is even just looking at their job posts. So look at their job description and look at, can that role be a part-time role? Is it already a part-time role? And if it is, then just very simply just tweaking some of the wording within that, thinking about, okay, does it have to be a hybrid role? If it is a hybrid role, then what is the minimum requirement of them going into the office? For a lot of parents, they love to go into the office once a week and be flexible, but maybe can you make that, does it have to be 3 times a week? Can it be once a week? Can it be once a month? And think about being really intentional about that hybrid working, so that when that parent does go in, the whole team's coming in and they're getting that collaboration time and that social time to get the most out of that. So that's just a really small tweak in terms of, remote hybrid. Because what we found in our survey is actually 99% of parents want the remote and hybrid roles. But when we look at our job board, we found that 3 times more parents apply to remote roles. So can it be a remote role? Just simple things like that. And again, being transparent about the salary that you're offering, look at the specific hours that you need. So, for 25 hours, what is the actual salary, not pro rata FTE? Because although that may seem like a really simple thing, it does create a barrier for somebody then to have to work out what the actual salary will be. Does it make sense for their childcare needs and all of those things? So it's just really simple changes they can start with in their job descriptions, first of all. And then when it comes to bringing that parent on board, thinking about how intentional they can be in terms of belonging and well-being, making that person really feel like they belong at the company, even if they're working part-time hours or reduced hours. Because we always say, there's a huge problem with part-time work, that is such a bias around it. Oh, just because you're part-time doesn't mean you're part dedicated. Often you overcompensate as a parent when you're working part-time to make sure that you are being seen to be part of the company culture. So this is on the employer to think about their culture and think, okay, how can we really include these part-time reduced hour roles within the company, really make them feel that they're part of it, including them all of the meetings. So thinking about the hours that they do the meetings. Can they do them in core times when everybody is working, not doing them at 5 or 6 o'clock when it's dinner and bath time? So yeah, just being really thoughtful and intentional. I think since the pandemic, we got really, in some ways, very lucky to see that the world can work in a completely different way remotely now. We can take advantage of that, and we have done so well. And now we've got to be intentional about how we do that in a way which is really inclusive and really bringing in all of those people that actually are sitting there ready to work. They just might not have had the opportunity before. So yeah, I think now it's just about being intentional and thoughtful around the hours that people can offer. It comes from the team managers in that sense, looking at your culture. Do they need training on including people who do work remotely or part-time, and making sure that everybody's included? Those things don't require an additional DEI lead. They're just very small changes that you can make in-house very quickly and easily.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I never really thought about the job description that way. So now onto you as, let's say, a working mom now and, balancing that being fully present with your children, but also being fully dedicated to the work you do. How do you set those boundaries?
Sure, I have to say it's been a challenge. I essentially work now 5-hour work days a week. And so those 3 days where I don't have either of my children, I work very intensely. I'm very productive. I block my time so that I know the things that I need to get done and prioritize very well. I do that so that when I go and pick my boys up from the pickup, that I can be there and be present. And it's not always perfect. Email might come in whilst I'm making dinner, but it's okay that I use a little bit of screen time when I'm cooking dinner and they're decompressing from the day. And then we always reconnect after dinner. I love to do bedtime, bath time as well. But for me, it's about thinking about the things that you really prioritize as a parent. And what are the things that are so important to you that you wouldn't want to let go of? So for me, it's the pickup. I love doing the pickup. I love being there with them. Bedtime and bath time, if I have to have a call in the US or something, then that so be it. And we've got systems around that. But for me, it's that after school piece, which is really, really important. And so I just boundary my time around that. But generally, it works really well because I've created these boundaries. And then I feel that I can be really present with the boys after school. It is an intense day, but I do it 3 times a week and it works. It's enough to keep the business going. And yeah, we've built a whole company on that. So it works.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, kudos to you for making it work that way. I think everyone also has to find their own systems that work for them. But one thing I would point out is it's also really great to model the behavior you want to see because our children look up to us to model the behavior and to shape them into full, complete human beings. And so I think having your children see that you can be a parent, a fully dedicated parent, and a fully dedicated working person and employee is also really important. I don't think it's bad if your children ever see you, you know, answering an email or something like that, as long as you explain, like, this is also a part of my life. It doesn't mean that I love work more than I love you, but this is still a part of what makes me happy and what makes me able to be a more complete person.
Well, that's it. And that was a big reason why I wanted to go back to work myself, was that I've had this time with them and I very much felt a part of me was missing in my career. I was always a very ambitious person before that. And so now letting them see me work and do something that I love, I can show up so much more fully for them at the end of the school day than I did before, when I just felt a little bit lost and didn't know who I was. So, and like you say, it's just about being transparent, just like you would be at work, just explain to them, I need to do this email right now. It's just important. I will be with you in 5 minutes. They are young and they're still learning, as am I, but it makes a difference that they see sometimes the world doesn't always revolve around them, and that's okay too. It's about finding what works for you and your family and what's important to you, and then you can show up fully at those times.
Yeah, really nice. Now, looking forward, where do you see the 5 Hour Club going, let's say in the next 5 to 10 years' time?
Gosh, yeah, it feels like a long time considering we've only been going a year. But at the moment, so the job board is fully up and operational. We're trying to find as many 5-hour work days as we possibly can, which is few and far between, unfortunately. So hopefully just making that more of a recognised thing, that the 5-hour workday is an alternative way of working for parents. That's our sort of goal there. We're doing a pilot at the moment with an NHS trust and a construction company who are really looking at the impact of this way of working on not only on them as an organisation, but also on the employee. So we're looking at belonging, productivity, wellness, but also the retention of this long term. So hopefully that would give us some really nice data to show to other organisations that actually this works really well, and here's the proof points. And then once we've proven that the 5-hour workday works, and it's just finding all those organisations, those family-friendly organisations, to do it and to offer it like they would do a 4-day work week, or they would offer part-time hours. It's about just offering this as an alternative way of working is our goal. And then for me, the big piece that I would love to continue with is the community piece. So we have a really engaged community of parents from all over the world, and I absolutely love working with them, listening to them, hearing them. But it'd be great to get some of those conversations out so they can share in conversations and ask questions to one another, because there's so much knowledge within our community that we want to share. We've just started a coach masterclass series where we're getting experts in to share all of their expert knowledge on, going back to work, confidence, career pivots, the mental load, what you can do about that. We've got ones coming up on boundaries and all of those things. So it's just about bringing in those experts into the community, creating those resources for helping parents go back to work. For us, it's about bringing all of these things together so that anybody who needs it has got it in one spot, essentially.
Really cool. And are you also looking to go into things like policy and all that sort of stuff, like making the change at a large scale like that?
Yeah, so we've already started doing a lot of advocacy work, particularly around the parental leave and paternity leave systems that are currently happening, the employment rights bill. We've been consulting on that because for us, it's really important. You kind of had to have a three-pronged attack, we feel, is that you've got the policy stuff that is going to determine what companies need to do, but then you've got the tangible piece around the jobs that companies can do very easily with very small changes. And then obviously you've got the community piece. So I feel it's really important to come out of our echo chamber, because for us, the paternity leave and the parental leave changes that we'd like to see, that has a huge impact on the motherhood penalty and the gender pay gap. Because if we can see that actually dads can also take that parental responsibility from the beginning, then that will mean that women can then return to work sooner. That will then reduce that gender pay gap. It has a huge impact on businesses. So just things like that with policy, it underpins the foundations for what we're doing sort of up on the surface, as it were. So we really think that those pieces are really important to bring together and to have those conversations out of our little bubble, because, every parent we speak to feels the same, but it's about letting those who maybe don't understand, who have not lived being a default parent, who've not, stopped their career, understand that as well.
Really nice. It's much bigger than just us as working parents. And as a working parent myself, let's say I want to support you because I really believe in your vision and in your mission. How can I start supporting you with this change that you're trying to make?
I say the biggest thing you can do is just talk to your own employer, talk to other parents who maybe want this kind of work, and just sort of showcasing it as an alternative way of working that really helps parents, get out of that echo chamber too, and talk to people beyond that who maybe don't understand. So I think that, as we said before, that sort of level of understanding is that everybody is starting to empathize with the position that we're in. The really simple thing that a parent can do is, we have a one pager where you can take it to your employer if you're coming back from maternity leave, or you're currently working part-time but the hours are too long in the day that you want to spread it over more days. Take it to them and say, this is a different way of working, this is my business case, this is why I think it would work really well for me as a parent. Another thing that we ask is, if you do find any family friendly employers out there, to bring them to our attention, because we just love hearing about all of the ones who we know we can go to and have a conversation with, who already get it. It's very easy to see the red flags, but the ones who are just doing the great work are often just hidden, getting on with it. So finding all of those great employers, bringing them to our attention so we can reach out to them and find these jobs, really will make a difference too. And just creating that community around you. Create your own 5 Hour Club in your own local area. If you know people who work in a similar way to you, start co-working and start reaching out, bringing that sense of belonging and community in your own space. Because when we bring these things together and these ideas together, that's when we're the strongest, right? If you're one parent, but there might be other parents within your organizations, create a parent network, create a part-time network, create 5 Hour Club network within your organization, to then be a bigger voice when you're asking for different benefits for your company, asking for more family benefits, your voice is louder. So just bring as many parents as you possibly can together, I think, is a good start.
You've really inspired me to take action now, because I think it's really easy to fall into that trap of feeling stuck and of feeling like you're the only one. Because currently I am in a full-time position and I'm maybe looking to scale down so that it fits my days better and my time management better. But yeah, I would have no idea to go about it. So thank you so much for the tips. And I think it's going to be valuable for a lot of other parents as well.
Well, I hope so. Happy to share any of our knowledge or anything we can, particularly on Instagram. We're very strong on there and on LinkedIn. So if you ever want to ask us questions, please feel free to ask us.
I'll drop the links in the description. Is there anything that you would want to add?
I don't think so. The only thing I would say is just be confident in what you're bringing to the table as a parent. You've got so much experience and skills, but also your new skills that you're bringing as a parent. Bring those, be proud of those, shout about it, because the more that you shout about it, the more that hopefully people will recognize that you can work and be a parent, and that should be celebrated. So be confident and assertive, because hopefully things are changing. I do feel things are starting to change slowly, but I think if we all keep talking about it, then we've got the best chance.
Great. Well, on that really optimistic note, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast and sharing your wisdom. And yeah, we'll stay in touch.
Thanks so much for having me.